Welcome to Medical Matters Weekly with Dr. Trey Dobson, presented by Southwestern Vermont Health Care and Catamount Access Television.
Welcome, everyone. Today is Tuesday, March 2nd. I'm Trey Dobson, Chief Medical Officer at Southwestern Vermont Medical Center and an emergency medicine physician with Dartmouth-Hitchcock Health. And this is Medical Matters Weekly, a show about the aspects of healthcare that matter to you most. My guest today is Jerry Posner, an author and speaker on the topic of positivity, which we are going to delve right into. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Jerry first, but Jerry, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Doctor. Thanks for having me.
So Jerry's bio, just a little bit about him. He earned a bachelor's in mass communications from Emerson College in Boston. What does mass communications mean, Jerry?
Well, mass communications has to do with media such as broadcast media, radio, television, newspapers, magazines. It's communicating to large groups of people. Could be lecturing, could be mass communication. You have a large audience, it's a mass. So yeah, rather, as opposed to maybe different forms of interpersonal communication, even though it's certainly part of mass communication. How's that?
Right. That's perfect. No, that's great. And then also a training specialist, a personal strategic coach, conference speaker, author, consultant on the power of positivity. So we're going to get into that. Jerry, I'd like to learn a little bit about my guests since I typically don't know them. And so just tell us a little bit about your background and where you're from.
Well, I grew up in northern New Jersey. I was born in Newark, grew up in the suburbs of Teaneck in Bergen County, went to college in Boston, and after I graduated, I worked in a recording studio as a producer of audio material, as well as did some voiceover work and some creative work. Eventually, I went to Southern California, where I worked in radio and also in advertising. I was creative director of a small ad agency and program director of an all-comedy radio station in the Los Angeles area. In the late 80s, I moved to the Berkshires to start a magazine called The Positive Times with some friends of mine who I had met in Boston years ago. So we published this magazine, and I did some radio work. While I was in the Berkshires, I created a weekly radio show called Positive Radio, which was a magazine format show, and it was aired in Berkshire County, where I live, in Pittsfield and surrounding areas. And around that time, I started doing workshops and lectures on material that I've been interested in for a number of years, and that is, how do people increase the likelihood of positive outcomes in their lives? How do we manage stress better? How can we be more rational in our thinking processes? And I became so interested in this topic and just researched it from a neurological, physiological, psychological, behavioral viewpoints that I started writing about it. And in 1993, I was invited to give a lecture at Canyon Ranch Resort in Lenox, Massachusetts, and they liked it. And I've been lecturing there ever since. I currently give 2 lectures a week. I've spoken there over 2,500 times.
Wow.
And it's just been a wonderful thing because I meet people from all over the world. And sometimes they will say, can you speak to my group or to my company? And that's been my speaking business for the last 30 years, mostly that way.
When you were in, I'm just going off script here a bit, you were in California and you were in comedy radio, or you're at least working at a station. Do you think comedy plays into the positivity aspect, or were these unrelated themes?
I think comedy is very positive. It's helpful. Laughter is good. Laughter is good for the system. Comedy is good because it gives you a different way of looking at things. I think the brain likes to be surprised, and good comedy has a good surprise to it in some way, often a punchline of sorts. There's different forms of comedy. but I mean, stand-up comedy, sketch comedy. I think good comedy is an art form that is very healthy, and I'm a great supporter of it.
So when you were, when you were back, before you got into the moving here and doing the Positivity magazine, you must have been a pretty positive person in your background, or is that not correct? Did you make a switch at some point? I guess what I'm asking is, when did you come to recognize this as a part of your life and a way you could give to others?
When I was 23 years old, I had a near-death experience that was very violent when I was living in Boston. It was a home invasion. These people were hired to kill a man, and they thought I was the man, but I was not the man, but it didn't matter. They were, it was very violent, and I lived through it. And for a while there, I had this unusual sense of no anxieties, worries. It was like I was on this other wavelength. I wasn't trained to be like a really positive person. But after this experience, I just became really interested in how points of view and behavior can change, how after a situation like that, I'm literally looking at the world differently. And I was just 23, but that was a pivotal moment for me. And I just became really interested in it. I went through different paths, spiritual paths, metaphysical paths, philosophical paths, gurus, movements, all different things. And I arrived at the conclusion that you can change your thinking. You can believe practically anything. If you can believe practically anything, why not believe that you can have a better life, that you can make really good choices, that you can learn from your experiences, that there's a lot to be grateful for, and that there's benefit to that. And so my life path really was strongly affected by that experience. And then I just wanted to be a happier person. And so I wanted to learn how to do it. And then I got really good at it. And then I started teaching it.
Jerry, that is an incredible story. I've interviewed and met lots of people that are quite positive. Typically, they are accomplished individuals, and that positivity is what got them there. And often they have gone through a traumatic situation, sometimes a small situation that just affected them. But that's a remarkable story. So, just going through some of your background and your teachings here, you talk about being a proponent of rational positivity. Can you just make a few comments on what that means and what that's meant to you personally?
Yeah, it means it makes sense. It's not wishful thinking. It's not pretending. It's not making believe. It's understanding that if there's some outcome, you call it a goal, an objective, it could be an improvement of some kind, like to be kinder or more compassionate or have more patience. It could be something like to learn a foreign language, learn a musical instrument, be better in relationship, be a better friend, be a better spouse. I mean, whatever it is, there are things that we can think, things that we can do that will bring us closer to that. And rational means sensible. Rational means reality-based. So I am a believer in things that work. I've done a lot of research. I have a lot of feedback on material that I've taught over the years, and it's the strategies that work the best for people are the ones that I like to talk about. The ones that don't work as well for most people, then I edit that out. And I do want to, state for the record, I don't give medical advice. I'm not a doctor of any kind.
Right.
I'm more of a strategist. That is, if this is the end result that you want, I can give you some ideas and suggestions that could help you get there. whether it's emotional or it's a mindset, belief system. You want to change your biases, which you can do. You can change your biases if you want to. And the want to is really important. There has to be a strong level of desire, because if there isn't a strong level of desire, then you're not going to do it, or you're going to do it for a week, like New Year's resolutions that often vaporize around the middle of January, because either not enough desire, or, oh, I forgot what it was. I didn't write it down. And so I don't do it. Or it's unrealistic, and so you give it up anyway. So the goals or the outcomes have to be, should be, I don't like to use the word should, but I will, should be sensible, rational, appropriate. So in my way of looking at things, positive means sensible, appropriate, generally optimistic, but not fake optimism. That is not make-believe optimism, but the understanding that if I look at things with a mindset that I believe that it's possible within the context of what is possible, like, I'm like 5'5.5". I'm never going to be like 6.5 feet tall. I'm never going to do that. No matter how much I want to, if I did, it's not going to happen. But if I want to be able to touch my toes without bending my knees, that I can do, because I can practice, I can do exercises, I can do stretching exercises. But if I don't do exercises, it won't happen. That is, if I don't do something, then it's not going to happen. And I don't do anything unless I have a desire to. And generally, I have to understand what is the reward. People use the word motivation. What motivates you? I like reward. What's your reward? Is it happiness? Is it pride? Is it money? Is it improvement? And so, why? And when I work with people one-on-one, and even in lectures, the why is really important. You have to know, because if you don't, you're probably not going to do it.
Right, absolutely. You actually touched on several concepts that, and you articulated these so well, that really are what are the underpinning of an excellent leader. So an excellent leader has rational positivity, as you said. I've used the word reasonable, but it's the same thing, positivity. But then they have to be genuine. If you are positive in front of a group of people and trying to motivate and inspire them, many of them will see if you're not genuine, if you are, as you said, fake, in what you're trying to accomplish. I think that's been the downfall of many leaders, and also it has been what has caused some leaders to just thrive, because they really can be rational, they really can be genuine, and still be, of course, highly positive, because we're all trying to attain a particular goal. So you've helped so many people change their attitudes and improve their outlook. I'm sure it's not a one-time quick conversation, but so what are the guiding principles or themes? And please elaborate here that you use towards helping people have a positive way of looking at the world and existing in the world.
Well, when I work with people one-on-one, the first question is, what do you want different in your future than you have in your present? What do you want different? Could be an improvement, a change, an achievement. And then I say, well, let's write that down and look at that every day. That would be daily. Did I mention every day? I think that repetition combined with desire is important. And I usually will write some reminders. Most of the great wisdom of the ages, can be summarized in one-line sentences, in my opinion. And, I read every book that comes out pretty much in, behavioral psychology, popular psychology, neuroscience, there's just tons and tons. Goal setting, stress management, it's all the same stuff. There is nothing new. Nothing is new. Nothing. People have different styles and different models, but basically there's nothing new. So what do? I encourage, I have ideas. Generally, like if people want to become kinder, more compassionate, reduce stress, I often recommend a gratitude practice, like writing down 5 things you're grateful for every day. That's like a core strategy that I have found is useful for just about every human. That is, you start to develop what I call a gratitude bias. That is, no matter what's happening, you realize that you have a lot of good and you have a lot of resources. You have maybe financial resources, you have friends, you have people who love you, you have technology, you have intelligence, you have so many resources. And it's really about remembering that you have these resources and remembering where it is that you want to go. And then understanding what might be blocking you. I mean, do you have a belief that says you can't do it? Where did that belief come from? I mean, is that a belief that is like real? Or is it something that came from something that happened in your childhood that, you still believe? I'm a big advocate of recognizing beliefs and biases and understanding them and trying to understand where they came from. And do you still want them?
Right.
Is this useful to you? Why do you want to keep doing this? And that's a good question, because often the answer is, I don't know why. And it's because it's a habit. It's a pattern. It's a neural pathway. So understanding habits, that's a big thing. Understanding habits, repetitive behaviors, repetitive thoughts, that's good to understand that. The gratitude stuff is really important because, first of all, the research on that is extraordinary. I mean, the branch of psychology called positive psychology now, as well as behavioral psychology and neuroscience, gratitude is usually very close to, if not at the top of the list of catalysts for a laundry list of positive changes: improved relationships, improved cognitive functioning, more happiness, less stress, better sleep. I mean, just so many benefits from taking a little time every day to either think about or write about what's some things that are good. And then we become, in many cases, more resilient. That is, our ability to deal with the things that are difficult. Gratitude's not a Band-Aid. It's not like, oh, everything's fine, because everything is not fine. But we have to manage our lives and we have to manage circumstances. And working with gratitude or having a positive mindset can be a tool, can be a bridge, can be helpful in just so many ways.
Well, Jerry, I love that, because when I think about positivity and positive people, success, leadership, then I think about those that are struggling. And so sometimes they are almost neutral, right? Not negative, but just neutral. And they're sort of aloof. And I find that much of the problem there, the underlying concerns is more depression and other things. But when I think about negativity, so people that are actually negative, much of that is actually anxieties and fears, as you were alluding to there, and actually focusing on what can I be grateful for helps that tremendously, get over those anxieties and fears, and then being positive. But you said something that I don't emphasize enough, and I don't hear it emphasized enough, and that is the repetition. You can't just be grateful one day and now you're going to be a positive person for the rest of your life. You have to practice it to an extent.
Well, yeah, it's all about the practice. You're not going to be a yogi by practicing yoga for a week. Right. You're not going to be a skilled guitar player by practicing for 2 weeks. You're not going to be skilled anything unless you learn and practice and get feedback and improve. If that's what you want to do, you have to, of course, want to do that. But yeah, I teach what I call the burden privilege ratio. And I have a little card, like a business card. It says percentage burden, percentage privilege. And when you have a burden, as we do, often we think 100%, I'm totally burdened. But that's because I'm not thinking about the privileges that I also have, which may be resources, might be people who can help me, it might be my network, it might be technology. So what I say is, you may start at 100%, but then think about what you have to manage it, to deal with it, to navigate it. And you go, yeah, well, maybe it's 70% burden, 30% privilege. And then the more you think about it, the more you realize that you have resources. This is a cognitive tool, because when we're stressed, when we're angry, when we're frustrated, we're coming out of our limbic system, flight or fight response, right? Cortisol and adrenaline.
Mhm.
And the part of the brain that is generally considered the rational part, the prefrontal cortex, essentially gets hijacked. I've heard it called amygdala hijack. That is the stress trigger, the amygdala in the limbic system, which triggers the so-called stress response, the flight or fight response. Generally, we're not thinking clearly. When people say, I was not in my right mind, that's literally true. But in order to get into the part of the brain that is more rational, we have to think with that part of the brain. And that could mean, using the privilege burden ratio, or that could mean asking yourself questions like, is this a real crisis? Am I making a mountain out of a molehill? And there's one phrase that I think is really important when we're dealing with stress, which is triggered by the perception of threat, right? We like something is threatening, because our ancestors were survival. They need to survive. So, millions of years ago, if they're walking through the jungle and there's a rustling in the bush, they're not going to say, I wonder if that's an animal that wants to eat me. No, immediately the adrenaline and the cortisol are triggered, and it's either run, or if you're strong and you have a weapon, flight or fight. In modern humans, it works similarly, even though sometimes the threat is not a real threat to our dignity, threat to our ego, threat to our money. Oh my God, the market's down. Oh, now the market's up. Oh, the market's down. Oh, the market's up. If you ask yourself, is this a real threat? The part of the brain that evaluates this question is the prefrontal cortex. That is, you can kind of get back into your right mind by asking yourself some questions. And questions are good, because questions require thought. And thought can assist in managing habitual or unconsciously triggered stress.
So tell to the audience here a little bit, Jerry. I mean, I think people are listening here and think this is fascinating. Apologize, my phone is ringing there. I'll grab it. But
Here's our next phone call.
Yeah. Here, I'll just go ahead and silence it right there.
Who could that be calling at this hour?
So the kind of question for the audiences who's listening and interested, take us through, like, what's a typical relationship you have with a client? How long does it last? How do you start off, and then how does it finish?
Well, it usually starts off, what do you want different in your future than you have in your present? And we discuss it, and I take extensive notes. And then I write homework for them and reminders. Usually it's like I write like a magazine article, especially for them.
Wow.
And they will do their homework. And usually our sessions are like 45 minutes or an hour. And I do them now on Zoom. I do them on FaceTime. So we discuss their issues, problems, bugaboos, paradoxes, and I give advice. And then they go and try it out. And then I'll talk to them again in 1 or 2 weeks and get some feedback. And while all this is going on, I'm coming up with strategies for them, different strategies based on the individual. No two alike. I don't do no no template.
Right.
It's all based on the needs of the individual, and I suppose their level of desire, their level of commitment, how important is it to them, and again, if it's like depression or anxiety, that should be a professional. I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, so I would say if it's something that they really need professional help, then I'll say you need professional help. But if it's mostly just changing a belief or changing thinking or setting goals or clarifying, often it's about clarifying. Like someone retires and they're like, what do I do now? I don't even know what to do with myself. Right. So I can help them with that. Or often there's a transition in between relationships, divorce, grieving, losing a loved one, losing a pet. Or it might be I got laid off from my job, or I quit my job, or I'm changing my career, or I'm starting a business. Right. And so it's all about what can help them to achieve whatever the outcome is. So actually, doctor, the answer is it really is unique to the individual. I'm a very good listener, and I take really good notes, and then create something special for them.
So very personalized. I think that's fantastic. And even though you mentioned the need to refer on for specific medical type issues, I am certain that there is significant benefit to folks that have medical issues to use your services or similar services as a part of their healing and change in direction, particularly if they have a chronic or long-term issue. Well, as we close here, Jerry, how do people, are they referred to you? How do people, do they go to your website? How do they get in touch with you?
Well, I'm very easy to find. I have a website. I have a blog. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. Every Tuesday, I call it Gratitude. And every Gratitude, I write a gratitude missive, a reminder, a quotation, an exercise, and I post it on all of those places. Mm-hmm. Like if you're, and I also put my lecture notes on my blog. So, if anyone's interested in the sort of thing that I'm talking about, my blog is a good place to come and see those things, which is www.jerryposner.wordpress.com. And that Jerry Posner is one word, JerryPosner.wordpress.com. Or, you can just find me, Jerry Posner, motivational speaker, Jerry Posner, Canyon Ranch, Jerry Posner, gratitude. And then you could just find all those things. And generally, the people that I work with are referrals. Right. I don't do a lot of marketing at this point. Most of my lectures and keynotes and conference stuff comes because someone sees me at Canyon Ranch, or they've read one of my books, or it's a direct referral. But I'm always happy to talk to people that might be interested, and I won't work with anyone that I don't think it would be beneficial to. It would just be a waste of their resources. Sure. So usually, we'll have a talk and see if what I could do would be helpful to them. And I'm very honest about that. I won't want to waste anybody's time or their money. So.
It's great. And as we close here, tell me, back to sort of circling back to the very beginning there, what are you looking forward to in the next year, professionally or personally, or both?
Well, my goal for the year is to be able to touch my toes without bending my knees. So every morning I do stretching exercises, and I'm getting there. Professionally, with COVID, we don't really know what the future is going to be, but most of my live performances, have not happened. A lot of the clients that usually would hire me wouldn't, because they're not doing any gatherings. That may change. So I really can't predict what's going to happen this year. All of my work is contractor, gig work. So, I have clients I'm working with. I have businesses I'm working with. I'm doing 2 Canyon Ranch lectures a week right now. And we live on 8 acres in Sheffield, Massachusetts. So there's fences to fix, and there's wood to be chopped, and there's dogs to be helped. And, there's I live in the country, right, which is really different than growing up in Teaneck, New Jersey. I'll tell you. I had to learn all new skills. My wife was from Michigan, so she came with these skills. I mean, she came with power tools and knows how to use them. I had to learn all new stuff. So, basically, I just want to keep doing what I'm doing and keep getting feedback. And I'm always revising my material. I may write another book, but there's just so many books. Why write another book? If you go on my blog, there's like my current stuff. And I still may put it together in a book, but I'm not highly motivated to do that right now. Does that answer your question, Doctor?
It certainly does. Thank you so much for joining us today on Medical Matters Weekly. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. It was really nice to come and visit. Appreciate it. Thank you.
For those in the audience who are interested in learning more, Jerry talked about how you can find out more and reach out to him. I'm positive you will get a lot out of it. I'd also like to thank our guest, Mike Cutler from CAT TV, Ray Smith from Southwestern Vermont Health Care, Ashley Jowett from Southwestern Vermont Health Care. I'm Trey Dobson. Go out and find joy in everything you do, even in the face of adversity. Tonight, I want you to write down 5 things that you are grateful for, as Jerry talked about, and we will see you next week.